have invited we have invited five speakers who are representing both public sector, UN organizations, and also universities for the research, and also have private sector to give the different perspective and sharing their experience regarding the under the concept of digitalization. So um, before we start, um, the I want to mention like digitalization is one of the most high frequent words in our life recent 5 6 years, and I believe mostly during the past 3 years during the COVID, especially during the period like we have to work from home. Everybody started getting used to like calling your colleagues online and having meeting online. Though we are still very excited to meet you in person here, right, face by face. Maybe some of you we already met before, but this is the first time for us to see each other in the same space. So uh, anyway, the rapid digitalization is affecting almost all the effects of our life. We have to admit it, including the way we interact with people's friends, families, colleagues, and how we work, even how we shopping, how we buy things, and how we receive the services, as well as how the value is created and exchanged. So when we talk about come to the digitalization for the digital economy, uh, so it's no longer the traditional business model and economic activities. So now when we come to the digitalization, the age of digitalization, it means like during the from the production, processing, and marketing, packaging, sale, until to the end user. In the every chain, every step of your business, you are using technology, digitalize the technology to power your business and be part of the global value chain. And the digitalization also make the entire process, the business, in some extent like lower cost. For example, if you come to the e-commerce, maybe you save the money for the physical infrastructure, physical shops, but I say in certain extent because for e-commerce maybe you require a lot of a budget for marketing, so that's always have a we say in certain extent. So and during the past 3 years, I think COVID 19 pandemic really gave us a very mixed um, like impact to like each of us, individual as a consumer or as most of a business, and even to the government, to the public sectors. Why we say mixed impact? Because some people maybe, or let's say most of SMEs, small medium enterprises, even the giant big companies, they are suffer a lot to close business because no physical in another way. There are a lot of business there. They got high profit during the COVID pandemic. For example, those who are trading product sales on e-commerce platform, who are technology-powered, internet-powered businesses, consultation services, and also um, uh, some of business. So they really benefit. They take the advantage of this COVID-19 pandemic to like become a very big company. The best example is Zoom, I think, right? Everybody using Zoom, and they become from a small company. Now it's everybody using. So this is a very good successful story. So uh, the another fact is, according to the recent report of UN conferences and trade and development, it has been estimated that the global internet traffic in 2022 will exceed all the internet traffic up to 2016. So e-commerce sales, digital economy is become a trend like which we cannot avoid. So in this way, we for most of organizations, either from public sector or private sector, it come out a question and come out of the issue we really have to carefully consider and find out the best solutions to respond those challenges and opportunities facing by the digitalization, the age of digitalization. Um, so there are many areas because of the digitalization. It's not like an easy say, okay, we just use a mobile phone. But before we use a smartphone, everybody can have smartphone. But before that, we need to have infrastructure ready. The communication information infrastructure to have signal, right? Fast internet, and a wider band for infrastructure. And the important for infrastructure should be accessible, available, and affordable. So that's what a lot of governments, private sector is trying to develop lots of strategy to make its infrastructure ready first. And the digitalization also related to if you want to develop digital economy, irrelevant you have to have a come out creative and innovative production, processing, and business model, and it also for the goods and also services. And another important issue could relate to digital education for equal and inclusive access to be able to use the digital technologies. And also the workers, skilled workers, maybe also need to be further trained for them to join the digitalized production procedure. And lastly, for the government, uh, e-governance, paperless, uh, should become one of very important needs from the private sector, from the normal people to the government services. And also another way, government is also requested to come out regulations to regulate the e-commerce players, as well as to have consumer protection law. So you could see when we are talking about digitalization, there are so many areas to work need to be done, and different country have a different very different development status, and the unbalanced development status will result to unequal in equal access of the technology, and so challenges, opportunities are there. Um, But I think this is a time we all have to find out a way to join this area of digitalization. So I took almost 50 minutes to give an introduction. Without further ado, may I request my colleague, could you please stop sharing the PPT and just to allow us to see all of our for today's session. I will quickly introduce one by one, and before the session to the speaker, I will introduce you a little bit more details. Firstly, we have our first speaker, Mr. Sajib Azad. He is the policy expert of the United Nations Capital Development Fund, UNCDF, and he will give a presentation talking shaping digital futures pathways to post-COVID-19 recovery. Mr. Sajib, welcome to the session today.
Thank you very much, Sawadee Krap. Do I start the presentation now, moderator?
Maybe you give me some time. I just quickly will introduce other
Sure.
I will come back to you.
Thank you.
So we will also, you can also see we have a second speaker, Professor Dr. Jian Wang. He is a chair professor of international business and e-business, director of the Center for International Business Studies of the University of International Business and Economics. Welcome, Professor Jian Wang, to join our session. The third speaker is Ms. Xin-Yi Lim. She is Executive Director of Sustainability and Agriculture of Pinduoduo company. Pinduoduo is one of the leading. Okay, sorry. So Pinduoduo company is one of the leading agriculture e-commerce platform in China. So we have her to share the experience of Pinduoduo for the rural e-commerce concept. And Mr. Professor Jian Wang, he will share the perspective for the cross-border e-commerce. And the fourth speaker, we have Mr. Chonladet. He is a president of a Thai Fintech Association. He will give the perspective, the rise of fintech and the digital payments for the post-COVID-19 recovery. And we have the last but not least speaker, Mr. Tiet Jing Oi. We call him Mr. TJ. He's a lead consultant of one of entrepreneur and information knowledge hub. He wants to share the topic about ASEAN's digital startup ecosystem pathways for post-COVID-19 recovery. So without the, sorry, let me introduce myself. I'm the moderator of session B2. So I will guide you to the Q&A session after all the speakers finish their presentation. So without further ado, may I invite Mr. Sajib Azad to give the presentation on shaping digital future pathways to post-COVID-19 recovery. Mr. Sajib, I will share the presentation from our side.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sawadee Khap, everyone. So thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to speak at this forum. It's really important, and one of the key things that has been mentioned already throughout today has been, so I think I can hear myself. Okay, so one of the key things that one of the key threads I have picked up so far from today is that this idea of connection and this idea about we have really gone through some very difficult times. There's been good news and there's been bad news. So the key is that the increase in public debt, the increase in poverty has also been matched with the increase in digital transformation, because we had to. Zoom is a good example, and there's many, many others. So the key for me in the sort of 15 minutes I've been allocated is to talk a little bit about when we talk about how to get value out of the digitization drivers, what do we mean by value, and how us in UNCDF Asia are trying to extract that value for the least able, the most vulnerable. So with that, the agenda today. So just 4 bullet points. First, we'll cover who we are. Next, we'll focus on some examples of what we do. And then finally, how we can work together with you and others. And before we go into who we are, just 2 bullet points about me. I'm Sajib Azad. I'm a policy expert, about 20+ years in banking, finance, regulation, and development, covering both developed, middle-income countries and least developed countries. And I currently support our work in the policy space with a particular focus on development, recovery, and increasingly the overlap with humanitarian activity. With that, could you go to the next slide, please? Fantastic. So this is a standard slide from us, just kind of outlines our vision. So what is our vision? Our vision is to promote digital economies that leave no one behind. You just heard me mention just now in terms of we have to reach out to the most vulnerable and the most excluded. That is basically our raison d'etre. So what does that actually mean? It kind of, behind all of this, what it fundamentally means is we're here to connect the dots between the financing, the delivery, and the people who are most in need. And how we do that, essentially, we connect it with three things. One, by financing tools, so capital for development. Two, operating in that crux between humanitarian development and recovery. They're not distinct, but highly interrelated pieces. And finally, what we bring to bear is both technical depth and breadth. Technical depth, by that I mean subject matter expertise, and breadth means the countries we cover, both as UN, also as UNCDF, and also in UNCDF Asia. So with that, let's look at some numbers on what UNCDF does, and then we'll dig into Asia specifically. Next slide, please. So this gives us a snapshot of the activities we do and kind of the areas we focus on. The interesting part here that I'd like to draw your attention to is if you look at right at the bottom of the slide, it says 183 projects piloted, 83 projects scaled. So what does that mean? What that means specifically for us is that often we need to operate where nobody else would want to, either because of the environment or because the business case perhaps doesn't make as much sense as it could. So our job essentially is to come into that place, bring in funding if we need to, bring in expertise if we need to, but the core engine that allows us to deliver is threading the needle between the funding, the implementers, and the user, and the partnership that drives that. We see, and I see as our role, is to basically drive that partnership to make private sector partners comfortable to work in development and vice versa, to make governments comfortable to work with private sector partners. Because the one thing that is writ large throughout everything we do is that we tend to start thinking that if I win, somebody else doesn't. But that is not true. There is many, what we call win-win scenarios, and that's what we focus on. That's our job. So with that, let's go to the next slide. Fantastic. So there are a couple of strategic frameworks here, and one of them I want to come back to before we finish today. So the UNCDF strategic framework, as you can see from the slide, it's essentially our job is to invest and catalyze capital to support the countries to achieve the sustainable development goals, inclusiveness, and you see the reference there of the 2030 agenda. And we, in particularly, UNCDF, focus on the least developed countries. And this kind of picks up what I just mentioned earlier, which is we need to be where nobody else is in some ways. We need to make those pieces of intervention work. So we focus on LDCs first and foremost. And in terms of the LDCs, what do? We catalyze additional private and public flows of capital. We strengthen the market systems and financing mechanisms to make sure that the capital we tap is utilized effectively. And we accelerate inclusive, diversified, green economic transformation. I think from this morning's session from ADB, you saw some of the similar themes coming in, because in the development space, we have realized this is what we need to do to deliver for the people who are most in need. Let me unpack LDCs a little bit. So what have we seen in terms of COVID-19 and LDCs? We have seen a couple of things, a few things, in fact. One, unemployment is definitely on the rise in the informal sector, in agriculture and in tourism. Two, gender equality is even getting worse, and the climate change has these issues, as has the pandemic. But as was noted at the first session today, the crisis also increased the pace of digital transformation, be it e-commerce, remittance, fintechs, many other things, because digital promises to add another $1 trillion to the regional economy in Asia. But for our point of view, not everybody is benefiting this in an equal way. So for example, our IDS, so Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard, indicates that the gender divide in Asia is between 38 to 57%. So that's one of the key areas we look at, that when the benefits of digitization is shared, that it's shared equally, and those who are excluded are certainly included. Could we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So that being said, this is what we do in Asia. So the countries we're present in as a physical office are Bangladesh, Myanmar, Afghanistan, and Nepal. And we have regional presence in Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Laos PDR. And as you can see on the ribbon below, we have number of development partners, number of development professionals. We work with a number of UN agencies. And essentially, you can see there as a snapshot of our 2015 to 2021 results. 8.5 million clients have been served, 32% of them women, 110 plus partners in Asia, 121 million in loans for clients. This is a key feature of UNCDF, that we work in this finance space. And we have unlocked 164 million of public and private resources. This is what I meant before about capital for development. One of the interesting things that you might be looking at in this slide is that if we focus on the least developed, why do we have regional presence in countries which are not the least developed side of things? But this is very interesting and something very interesting that we do. And you might have heard the South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation, which can mean a lot of formal things, but in effect, what it means, we want to learn from all these sources, but especially we want to learn from environments that are similar to our implementing environments. So we look regionally to learn, to apply local and localized knowledge. So what we deliver is as resilient as we can make it. So it's not just good on paper, it's good on practice, and it continues to be that way. Okay, next slide, please. Perfect. So we talked about who we work for. We talked a little bit about how we work. Let's talk a little bit about the key frameworks, tools, and knowledge products that we use to deliver what we want to deliver. So we research, we share, we learn, we apply. But some of the examples that I wanted to share with you here is, you can see there's a dashboard there. We call it the Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard. So this is where, sorry, I just heard something. Where we analyze our country in terms of the digital economy, the inclusiveness of it, and we propose actions to close those gaps. And actually, if you go to our website, and if you don't know that, please revert to us and I'll share that with you. That has all the reports we have done so far, which can give you a very quick snapshot of where a country is and where we think it needs to go to. Some other key knowledge products that we'd like to touch on, the gender playbook. So we all talk about gender and inclusion and gender intentionality. This shares examples of how to make that happen in a very real sense and not in an academic sense or in a theoretical sense, because our work has to focus on the reality of the ground. Next, data collection and analytics by central banks. This is another key piece of knowledge product that we've produced, which is if you're a central banker and you want to upgrade your data collection analytics, particularly where you had gaps, we suggest ideas and learnings on how that can be done. And another example I want to share here is designing gender smart products. So this also speaks to the gender playbook, which is we all want to make it gender intentional and want to make it inclusive, but actually what does it look like? So a gender smart product is, for example, showing how a private sector partner can design financial products that has gender intentionality baked in and the resilience and long-termism baked in too. So with that, that's sort of my introductory part. Next, I have 4 slides where I'll cover 4 example projects that gives you a flavor of what we do in Asia and the key learnings from that. And then finally, I'll come back to how we can work together more. Could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is one of our projects in Afghanistan. As you can see, our key focus here was for how do we digitize the payment for cash-based intervention. So what did we achieve? 5 NGOs were partnered with us. We reached 1,041 beneficiaries and a USD value of 159,312. Now, those numbers might not seem particularly big, but the context here is that the challenges Afghanistan is going through currently. So we had to deliver this result for our partners, for the end recipients of that cash in a complex environment. And what have we learned from that? Because that's actually where the real value is. over and above achieving results on paper. One, we have learned that, we all know this, it's really important to be mindful of externalities. So for example, we found 10% of the beneficiaries, they did not have cell phones. So what we designed had to work somehow for those who don't have cell phones. A second thing, and this is something we also all speak about a lot, but it really has a direct impact on how we can achieve for our clients. And that is the cultural context. So for example, we were not allowed in this case to take photos of women beneficiaries during the process of registration, account creation, cash disbursement. So what has been really key for us, if I had to summarize this project, it would be, we absolutely need to understand the environment in a number of different ways, and we need to continue to finesse that understanding. Could we go to the next slide, please? Great. So this is our work in Bangladesh. So here, again, let me just run through the headings. Essentially, the work here was enhancing recovery and resilience of MSMEs, small and micro businesses. How did we do that? We partnered with ShopUp, which is Bangladesh's leading B2B platform for shops and online sellers and e-shop. And essentially, we built in the DFL, so digital financial literacy tools, right into the toolkit that they were using for these SMEs. And we reached out, and this allowed us to access 100,000 micro businesses very quickly and very effectively. So what did we learn? Two things again. One, importance of the combined approach for the delivery of financial and digital literacy. So both virtual and in person, it has to be integrated. They both have to be combined because they both have their use, especially as we're coming out of pandemic. Not everything can be in person, so we have to be smarter in the way we design our interventions so they both work and complement each other. And next, it's something, again, we talk about often, which is embedding the tools into existing services. This is really, really important, that what we do in the capacity building space isn't seen as additive, or it's not a hassle to get access to it. It's part and parcel of your principal reason of engaging with the digital platform, the digital tool, the app, whatever it is. So again, seamless integration and seamless implementation. So to summarize, key learning on this one, for me, it's integrating within existing mechanisms, tools, processes, and actually, really importantly, behaviors. Our clients are the least included or the most excluded. We have to tap into the behaviors and how they are used to doing things, and we make incremental improvement, tapping into already the behaviors and the processes they follow. That's a way, not just to achieve results in a very resilient way, but it's going to keep on giving us results going forward because we're keeping the human at the center of what we design. Next slide, please. So this is for Myanmar. So we're currently working to develop and implement an open source technology-based interoperable payment platform that is principally for MFIs. So there's quite a few words there. Let me unpack each one a little bit. Open source technology. So the key thing here for us is that whatever we design, it doesn't lock in the users or the platform into commercial dependencies that then once implemented keeps on increasing. What's important here is, and we've seen this also in Brazil and also in Peru, that there needs to be a balance between the commercial imperative and the development imperative. 100% focus on one or the other is not going to get us to where we need to go. Why? It's exactly what we mentioned right at the beginning. Partnership drives our effectiveness. And this partnership is not just with private sector, it's also with the end user. So we have to thread the needle, or we have to triangulate between the different needs and wants of the different groups and come to a balanced view. So open source technology does not necessarily mean the platform then runs at a loss. What it does mean is that profits can be pulled back into the platform. So it's not run for profit, it's run for sustainability. So that's what we mean by open source technology. Interoperable payment platform, we all know what that means, that there'll be cross-border discussion a bit later on. So I'm sure this kind of material will be picked up by then. But let's go to the results we've achieved to date. We have 30 DFSPs, CEOs, and IDOs who are partnering with us and who are helping us design and deliver this, and 2 companies for technology and operations. Our outreach, because we're in the delivery phase right now, is 2.2 million clients, of which 1.8 million are women. This is because our principal focus are MFIs, and in Myanmar, a large part of the base are women. So what have we learned? 3 things. 1, it's critical. It's really critical to have trust. And when we talk about trust, it's not just trust of the end user, which is fundamental for adoption and continued use, but also trust from members, partners, anyone we work with. Because even in the best case scenario, doing a project like this is a complex endeavor. There needs to be a shared sense of purpose, that what can be achieved and how we achieve it. And purposes do not create trust, behaviors do. And that's really important. Next, it's key that what we design not only works now, but it continues to work. So the way I kind of noted is that we need to have a strategic focus, but tactical dynamism to deal with the realities and the challenges on the ground. And then finally, it's something that I mentioned earlier about the South-South aspect, is that we need to localize the application of global sound practices. Just because it works elsewhere doesn't mean it's going to work for us. Or just because it doesn't work elsewhere doesn't mean it's going to work for us. We have to constantly evaluate what we learn elsewhere. How do we thoughtfully apply it to the challenges we are facing in that specific project? The interesting thing here is that although it's seductive to think about A to B to C to E process, and this will give me the results, the reality, as we all know, is that we have to be flexible, we have to be thoughtful, and we have to be nuanced in delivering complex projects. And one last slide on our example experiences. Could we go to that one, please? Nepal. So in Nepal, what we did, we digitized micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises into an e-commerce platform. And again, we have an e-commerce session later on, so I shall listen to that with great interest. And essentially what we delivered was we partnered with Kalti, digital financial service provider. We reached out to 688 MSMEs very quickly who joined the e-commerce platform, including 239 women-owned enterprises. And finally, entrepreneurs conducted more than 213,000 transactions, resulting in additional revenue amounting to nearly 640,000 USD. And this is exactly what I meant previously, that just because it makes an income and that it financially makes sense, doesn't mean it doesn't have to make sense elsewhere and vice versa. Our role is to find that commonality and deliver for partners and end users. What did we learn from this? We learned that partnering with a payment service provider, such as an e-commerce platform, has been very effective in Nepal. And we have done this elsewhere before and we'll continue to do this again. But again, balancing the needs of the various partners in that ecosystem. And second point, digital transactions give an opportunity to discover sustainable alternative sources of revenue. This is really interesting, that although our principal objective was the outreach and the inclusion and sustainability, working with us, the private sector partner identified further revenue streams. So that is actually really exciting. And it actually is a very good illustration of that win-win idea that I mentioned earlier. So those are the examples. I just have one more slide. If you could go to that. Great. So this is what I'll leave this session with in terms of my overview. We discussed a number of things of what we do, how we do what we do, examples showing those in action. To summarize, this one slide, it covers what we focus on in Asia, which is improving digital policies, regulatory environment at the country level, reinforced by regional framework. So this is where Mekong Institute, other IDOs, other convening mechanisms have a very important role to play. Next, we strengthen open digital payment infrastructure. this is really important. We've seen what an engine digital payment infrastructure has been in terms of development. And again, when I say we have to strengthen the open digital infrastructure, what we're really tapping into here, it has to be strong, it has to work, and it has to continue to work and deliver for all the different parties. Third, increasing access to financial resources for those innovating in the digital economy. This is where UNCDF has a really interesting role to play. We can identify those which are perhaps more innovative ideas that seem a little shaky, and we can come in and as a partner and bring in capital, bring in other partners and capital. And fourth, increasing citizens and MSMEs' capability to fully participate in digital economy. And the interesting word here is fully. So not on paper, not as a compliance exercise, but a genuine, resilient engagement and a genuine, resilient interface between what we do, what the client does, and what the users do, so it continues to deliver. So if that is what we do, how do we do it? I'll repeat what I said right at the beginning. We do three things. We do other things, but these are the three broad headings. One, we have financing tools, so we'll be in capital for development. We operate in the crux between humanitarian and development and recovery being very important as we come out of pandemic. And how do we do it? Not just capital, we bring in technical depth and regional breadth. With that, I think that's my last slide. So could you go to my last slide, which has my contact details? Perfect. Thank you very much, Forum. Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you very much, all of you, for listening. And with that, I'd like to end my session. Kokun Nahrap.
Thank you to Mr. Sajib to give us very interesting presentation from the perspective of UN organization. His organization is about Capital Development Fund. That's why you notice a lot of project he has shared is relevant to inclusive financial projects. And I think it's a really good perspective to let understand as a development organization or as a government, and also even the private sector, you can also notice like what governments, what are the regional relevant international organizations, they should or they have been working on this for the inclusive financing projects initiative, and where you can participate in and where you can benefit. So I believe there are lots of information beneath. 15 minutes cannot cover all. I really wish like you can keep contact with Mr. Sajib, and also you can visit more informations. So Mr. Sajib, I couldn't give you more time, but we will come back question and answer later. Yeah. So the next speaker, may I invite Professor Mr. Jian Wang. He is the chair professor of international business and director of Center for International Business Studies, University of International Business and Economics in Beijing, PR, China. And he is also a very active resource person, experts to the UNESCAP, the UN organization, UNESCAP and UNTAC, some like a Digital Economic Committee of International Chamber of Commerce. And also his expert areas related to cross-border e-commerce, trade facilitation, trade negotiation, and mostly recently about the inclusive trade and finance. And he has been the consultant for the government of both Ministry of Commerce of China and also the local government to provide lots of consultant related to trade and also the e-business. So without further ado, floor is yours, Professor Jian Wang.
Okay, thank you, the moderator, Wen. I'd like to share my screen, my PPT here. Okay.
Yes, it is coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the invitation to participate in this forum discussing the prospective of cross-border e-commerce development in Greater Mekong sub-region. I'm from UIBE, University of International Business and Economics. You see, we look at the outlook of the cross-border e-commerce in GSM. I think we have to understand what is happening now in the global marketplace. So that's why I will talk about the global market transformation. And then I will discuss some of the implications and future cooperations among the Greater Mekong sub-region countries. You see, actually, what we are interested in is how that we can use these technologies like the internet, information, or in other terms, the digital economy to accelerate these COVID-19 recovery in the Greater Mekong sub-region. And you know, if you want to achieve that goal for the recovery of our economy, I think we have to know what is happening in our global marketplace right now. And actually, whether it is digital economy or digital trade, and these economic activities to some extent has been driven by the global digitalization process, including the digitalization of international trade. And this was happening only in the last 20 years. So these 20 years, of course, was a critical period for our human beings because we are facing a lot of challenges and we are undergoing a lot of changes. And you know, for the last 20 years, at least what I can see in China, there are a lot of changes in the economic activities. A lot of small business and even individuals, they are becoming the participants in global trade. Especially this can be reflected in a lot of such e-commerce activities across border. Many companies that are moving online and become participants in the trading activities in China and all over the world. We may give it a label or a description to describe what is happening in the last 20 years, inclusive trade. When we say inclusive trade, it means that more and more small business, they are coming on the world market stage. But why? Why we have the cross-border e-commerce that many companies, they can sell the product directly from the manufacturer to the end users all over the world, not only to the Southeast Asian countries, but to the rest of the world. But why? Why these things happen? Why we are facing such these challenges in the digitalization process? Normally, people describe it as the transformation process. I think the reason might be the internet, the World Wide Web, that drives our economies and our trading practices to have that innovation. And the most important thing, or the key point I like to point out, is because we are having the platforms, the third-party platforms, including Alibaba, Amazon, or eBay or any other platforms like Airbnb, Uber, or Tencent, even Google or Baidu, or many such examples in our digital economy. These platforms, they are playing more and more important roles in our society. So, you know, our economic activities or the innovations in our economic activities, they are not going to increase efficiency, but to be very effective way. When I talk about efficiency, it means to do things better. But effectiveness has another meaning, that is to doing better things. So when we have these third-party platforms, it means that they will use new ways, innovative ways to integrate all these different resources in the marketplace all together within one platform. And that empowered small and medium-sized enterprises to do international trade. So we see opportunities. We see the outlook of these economic activities is driven by these digitalization process. These platforms, they become the new market players. So that's why I think we are coming to the age of digital economy or digital trade. And pandemic, of course, in the past 3 years has brought a lot of disasters, but actually the pandemic is also an accelerator to our e-commerce development in one country or within the regions and sub-regions in different parts of the world. So we're moving from the trading from one country to another country, because with this e-commerce and cross-border e-commerce, we see companies, they are involved in a lot of international corporations, the new way of doing business. We see many companies, they are struggling with these new market structure because a lot of traditional companies, they are facing these two marketplaces. One is in the physical marketplace. Still, they are doing traditional business. So now their end users, their clients, their customers, they are moving online. So they have to deal with another market that is a virtual marketplace online. So a lot of traditional companies, as I observed, they are facing these challenges of how to deal with these two markets. They don't know how to coordinate these activities in different markets. So we see a lot of companies, not only they are facing the global market transformation, but they themselves facing the challenges in the transformation of themselves. So we know that it is happening in China. We know it may be happening in other countries. So what I want to see in future in Jian, Greater Mekong sub-region is that these countries, some of the countries are least developed countries, and some of the countries, they are developing far behind, and other countries maybe are developing ahead of the digital economy. So why we should push these countries to work together in order to promote these inclusive trade. And that's why I would like to discuss some of the implications for the of these global market exchange, global market transformation for GMS cooperation. The first thing is we should put a lot of emphasis to establish a trusted environment. And that means we should improve these market infrastructure, including these internet connection, the accessibility of the users to internet. Of course, in many least developed areas, even in China, we see the users, they don't have to use a laptop or computer for the accessibility, for the access to the internet, and they just have a mobile phone, and that's okay. But for the least developed countries like in Cambodia, Laos, I think they are the same. They just use a mobile phone and they can do everything. So how can we make sure that we can have these accessibility by most users, including the payment? As the first speaker, Sajib, they mentioned the online e-payment system. And that is very, very important to establish the trust system in our marketplace. And also we should stress the importance and the key role of platform. And we need to discuss and establish a certain kind of mechanism for these platforms to work together in order to provide better services and empower these small size enterprises. And the second point is how can we make sure that we can establish an efficient and harmonized system by cooperating with each other. We need to do more of trade facilitation, including the cross-border e-commerce trade facilitation. We need to integrate all these different services all together within one platform in one country to provide a single window system, and also help these platforms or service platform or integrated service platforms to reach far beyond their border, to have the interconnectivity, and also to encourage the government to come up with policies and regulations that are stable, predictable, and also consistent with each other. We also need to develop these PPP, private-public partnership. We know there are some cases that like Alibaba is discussing these PPP or private-public partnership with like Thailand government or Vietnamese government to promote more and closer relationship with the platforms and the government in order to provide more helpful services for these small, medium-sized enterprises. And the third point is we need to establish appropriate legal environment in order to enhance these better trade environment, like the consumer protection, cross-border data flow, and privacy. We should care more about privacy issues, and also the cross-border cooperation in these areas. Because for digital economy, not only we're doing trade in physical goods, we care about the quality of the goods. We care about how that we can move these goods across border in an efficient way to build up a resilient supply chain system. But also we care about the data flow behind these goods flow. And if you look at future, if you look at these new technologies and its use in our international trade, like Internet of Things, big data or artificial intelligence. There will be more and more even physical goods. They are combined with services and internet. So in order to promote these new way of doing business and also innovative product or innovative offerings from companies to the end users, in order to enhance the experience of the users, we need to care more about the data flow behind these business activities. So we think we need to establish a kind of mechanism for these deeper cooperation among these countries in GMS, the sub-region. So in conclusion, we think that in order to have this quick recovery from our COVID-19 in these sub-region, we need to look at the future. We need to understand these global market transformation process, because cross-border e-commerce, if you look at today, it is not about only the buying and selling products online across border. Cross-border e-commerce has developed to this stage that we need to have further cooperation between the countries, because we see a lot of examples, not only in China, but also in other countries, that cross-border e-commerce, it needs more of cooperation, which involves the local resources, because when you sell a product to another country, it is not only selling a product and have your product delivered to another country. Normally, it will involve the local services. For example, if you want to sell even a government clothes, it normally will involve the local designers, the local models, the local internet celebrities for you to promote your products. And even in some cases, you see this involves the local physical stores to provide better services for your end users. So it is not only these buying and selling of products activities, but it is more of an ecosystem that involves a lot of local resources and cooperations between these different countries. So that's why we propose that why not we reopen these greater Mekong sub-region market by promoting e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce, trade facilitation, and more cooperation. And we are hoping with this new cooperation, we to solve all these problems and meet all these challenges on the cross-border e-commerce facilitation. Because
excuse me,
when we look at these, when we make further investigations into these markets, we found there are many end users, consumers, and companies. They hope that within this region, we should establish more of these trust system, legal environment, and also we need cooperation to facilitate such cross-border e-commerce in this area, because with RCEP and other trade agreements, there are more of companies, they become to shift to this region for development.
Professor
So,
Wang, I apologize. I will have to really stop you, interrupt you here because of time limits. We still have
okay. Anyway, with that, I can conclude my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. because we still have a main session at 3:45, so we have to stop Professor Jian Wang for his few words. Anyway, thank you very much to Professor Jian Wang to give us the perspective and the suggestions for regional the government's cooperation to have a mechanism to facilitate the cross-border e-commerce. So for the next slide, Ms. Xinyi Lim, she is the Executive Director of Sustainability and Agriculture Impact of Pinduoduo Company. And Ms. Xinyi Lim is the executive, she is responsible for Pinduoduo's international corporate strategy efforts and innovation in sustainability and agri-tech. Before joining Pinduoduo, she worked for Singapore's Sovereign Wealth Fund, both in Singapore and the New York office. So she holds a bachelor degree from University of Oxford and also master degree from Harvard University. So Ms. Xinyi Lim, floor is yours. Please kindly share your, either we can share screen for you or you prefer to share screen from your side.
Sure, I think in the interest of time, maybe I'll let you share the slides. I see you have it queued up. So thank you very much to the Mekong Institute. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you at the Mekong Forum. So I have maybe about 10 slides and I'll try to keep to time. I just want to give all of you a sense of who Pinduoduo is. So Pinduoduo was founded in 2015. We first launched with a focus on agricultural products because in 2015, that's where we saw a huge market opportunity. As many of you may know, China is a pretty developed country when it comes to e-commerce, right? So Professor Wang was just explaining earlier, many of the nuances that you have to think about when engaging in e-commerce. So when we look at the agricultural space, that was something that we saw was ripe for entry back in 2015. So if we go on to the next slide, we have some numbers that will give you a sense of our scale. So Pinduoduo had about 882 million active buyers on our platform in the beginning of this year. So that's defined as anybody who has bought something on our platform in the last 12 months. We have about 16 million farmers who are on the other side of this marketplace who are selling agricultural products to this 800 million plus shoppers. And in 2020, we had about $42 billion worth of agricultural products transacted through platform. So we're a third-party marketplace. We don't buy the products and hold them ourselves. It is very much about providing connectivity between the farmers. They may be wholesalers, farmers, cooperatives, as well as the consumers. So most times these are regular consumers like you and I. So we're not trading commodities. We're not, buying wheat or corn, right? It is really just things that you and your family might be consuming. So maybe a kilogram box of apples or oranges or potatoes. On to the next slide, please. So on the next slide on the left, I have here a picture of how our app looks like. So we're a very mobile-centric firm. When we launched in 2015, mobile was pretty much the big wave, right? So we're app-only focused platform. And what we have done is to introduce this idea of a team purchase, whereby when together with another person, could be your friend, could be your family member, or even a stranger, you would be both enjoying a lower price. So what that does is that it helps to draw in a lot more users, right? Because they're incentivized to share, to make purchases together with others to enjoy lower prices, while at the same time, the product is still shipped individually to their homes. So it's still very convenient. They don't have to, sort out the logistics, but compared to shopping on some other platform where you shop by yourself, the advantage here is one, obviously you enjoy a lower price, and two, there's product discovery. So I may not know about a special agricultural product from a certain part of China, but maybe a colleague of mine introduced it to me, right? They shared the link with me on WeChat and I tap into it and I see, oh, I didn't know that you have black apples, right? What are these, interesting fruits? So then I, as a new consumer to that product, help to expand the market that farmer is now facing. So now that farmer is able to tap into a nationwide network of shoppers like myself. So they enjoy greater market access. They obviously also enjoy more visibility into pricing because everything is live, right? So if they increase the pricing by 1 RMB, they decrease it by 1 RMB, they can see in real time how that is translating to sales. And they can also get customer feedback. So it's a lot more direct. They're now hearing from the customers. Maybe they say, the apples were very sweet, but then the color didn't look very nice, right? Or maybe the apples, when they arrived, they weren't in a very good condition. So then the farmer can take that input and think about how they can better improve their operations. And obviously that team purchase, a very important thing it does is it also gives the farmer a lot more certainty in terms of the sales volume, because now instead of just one order, they're getting 2 orders, right, from myself and my friend coming in at the same time. So that order that my friend could have placed elsewhere now gets pulled along and is going to the same farmer that I'm making a purchase from. So that's very powerful in terms of giving that farmer certainty into the volumes that they can be shifting. And over time, in the last 7 years, as we have scaled to 800 million plus users, we're able to relay some of that information that we see in terms of supply and demand, so that when we work with the third-party logistics providers, there's better planning when it comes to on the logistics, routing, right? So instead of having to go to certain transit points, now if we can actually forecast, say today, this is the order number, but we know with quite high certainty that give it in 2 days time, which is when the truck actually needs to be there, it's going to be X. So that way the trucking companies can also improve the utilization of their equipment, of the trucks. And that translates again into more cost savings. So on the production side as well, the farmers also have a better sense of what it is that consumers want, and they can plan ahead, right? So if it's a farmer who is growing a certain crop, they might be thinking more about, okay, maybe I should be growing a certain variety that is more popular, because now there's that customer feedback. So ultimately what this does is that it reduces that potential mismatch that we have historically seen in many agricultural markets, whereby what the farmer produces may not be what the market is ready to buy, right? Or maybe the demand is not high as they expected, and then they have to take a lower price and take a hit. So over time, this helps to drive a more efficient system. If we go into the next slide, we can see that from the left-hand side, right, what I kind of outlined was, first of all, starting from, more users, right? Me pulling in my friend pulling me in, that translates to higher sales for the farmer, and it also helps to lower costs, right? So the example that I gave of the lower logistics costs. Now that also means that they can pass some of those savings onto consumers, right? They can also bring on more products now that they have a lower logistics cost to deal with. And over time, this generates even more user interaction, right? On the right side of this chart here. So the second flywheel, that enables us to have a better understanding of our users, what they like. We can give them better recommendations, right? We know, for instance, that Xin-Yi likes to buy fruit. She also likes to buy exotic fruit, right? So maybe that will be a good person, right, to be showing some of the more niche fruits that there are in the marketplace that are struggling to find a buyer. Over time, that means that we have a better user experience as well, right? Because I keep seeing things that I like, so I keep tapping on them, right, and I make more purchases. And over time, that builds into trust and recognition of the platform itself. And on the next slide, I'll share an example of a project that we launched a few years ago called Pinduoduo Farm. So Pinduoduo Farm is a very innovative effort that we've engaged in together with our partners, the local governments, as well as agronomic institutes. So earlier, we've heard, description of public-private partnerships. So this is really an example of that. as a private company, we're a technology company, right? 2/3 of our company staff are engineers. So we're very asset light. We know how to code, we know how to program, we know how to market and sell things to consumers, but farmers also need agricultural knowledge. They need agronomic know-how. And there's a great wealth of that with the agronomic institutes. But some of them, they have a very limited reach as well, right? An individual expert, he traveled to so many places, he can only work on so many projects. So what we've done is we've tried to build a more systematic approach whereby we work with the local governments to make a more scaled project. So in this example here, we have citrus, for instance, where the farmers in Nujiang in Yunnan province in China, they're able to come together in a cooperative that the government has created. And so the local government is on hand. They're there to also help ensure that they follow through with the advice that's provided by the Agricultural Institute. And then we, through the seed funding that we provide, as well as the marketing support, as well as the training, right? We do online, offline training on how to run an e-commerce business, how to market, etc. That helps to build a more comprehensive approach whereby, the farmer on one hand gets not just the farming advice, right? It's not just somebody saying, oh, you should do this instead of that. On top of that, there's also that visibility into how they can sell their products, right, at the end of that process. So they know that, oh, okay, there's Pinduoduo that's involved. There's 800 million people shopping on Pinduoduo. It's going to be some marketing support. So they know that when they launch their store on our platform, they're able to get some traffic, they're able to get some sales. So there's good momentum there. And so all three parties really have to come together to make the Duoduo farm a success. And that's a small effort on our part, but it's been very encouraging because we've also seen, other governments come in and say, oh, we would like to replicate this in our province, for example, right? And many of these sort of farms that we work with over time, as they build up their business, it's a standalone, economically profitable business, right? So it doesn't really require, constant subsidies or handholding. And that's the model that we're trying to pioneer here. So on the next slide, you'll see some of the pictures of the new farmers that we have worked to incubate. And new farmers are really, a lot of them are young entrepreneurs who want to go back to their hometowns. So back to, I think, the earlier introductory remarks at the start of this session, digitization is not just about the technology itself. It's about laying the groundwork. So we also need to train up the local communities. And oftentimes these youths, these new farmers, what they do is that they help to mobilize their local communities, right? They pick it up quite quickly, and then they are the ones who maybe lead the business and help teach the other people in the community how to be a part of the e-commerce revolution. So on the next slide, we can see, for example, this is a young entrepreneur who has started out in the cattle business, and then other people in same community actually selling other kinds of crops, they also started to work with him. So he actually mobilized a lot of other people in the community, not just in his farm, to join the digital economy. And then, of course, on top of that, there's logistics, there's packing as well. So not everybody has to be a farmer. At the same time, not everybody has to be, on the front lines, manning the e-commerce store, doing the customer service. So it's really a very win-win situation. And on the next slide, just want to share as well some of the more innovative technical solutions that we're trying to bring through our platform. Because we're such a large platform, many farmers have heard of us, and we feel that it's a good opportunity for us to showcase the technical innovations available. So through the Smart Agriculture competition, we're able to demonstrate to farmers very tangibly how you can use AI to improve your production, to improve the quality of the produce. So we've done that for strawberries, for tomatoes, and we're also sponsoring research with A-Star in Singapore and Wageningen in the Netherlands to further improve different aspects, right? Food safety, as well as the quality of tomato crops. So moving on, in conclusion, I just want to share that, we have a lot more resources available on our website. So you can Google, you can check out the Smart Agriculture Competition. We're also sponsoring, wheat projects together with the China Agricultural University. And these are just some examples of how, as a technology platform, we're championing the idea of tech for agri and trying to make it more acceptable and commonplace that you see the use of technology in agriculture, and spread the word that technology is not just for the youths, it is really for all farmers, and we need to lay the way for different conduits, right? So it's enabling the local communities, it's working with the local governments to make sure that there's better uptake of these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Ms. Xingyi for your very interesting presentation. Best practices from Pinduoduo. We will notice that from the private sector, as a private company, how to innovate your services to find out to be more competitive. You can provide the services in the e-commerce industry. Meanwhile, you can also bring the sustainable and the impact to the society. Especially for the agricultural products, it's very different from all other types of products. It's perishable. It requires very high technology and very well planning for make sure the products is well packed and transport to the end users. So I think Pinduoduo this have give us inspired us about what could be done for the agricultural products, which are mostly the products of other Lancang Mekong countries and later GMS countries. Thanks again to Ms. Xingyi, and we will quickly move to the next speaker. So may I invite Mr. Khemarattana, the president of a Thai Fintech Association, to give the presentation, give the view from the fintech and the digital payment for emerging technologies for post-COVID-19 recovery. I really have to apologize. I have to, because of the timing, please kindly control your time. Thank you so much. What happened? Maybe I have to close my microphone. Yes, turn off.
Okay, sorry, I need to steal your microphone. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here to see you face to face. So I would like to make this session more engaging, okay? So I have really three key messages for today. The first one is about payment, obviously. In Thailand, fortunately, we are one of the top 3 in the world in terms of the mobile payment penetration. Meaning that if we have 100 people using internet, we have so many people using mobile payment. And second of all, we would love to talk about fundraising. Nowadays, we have many methods of fundraising. You can go for the traditional one like initial public offering of debt or equity, and you can do the crowdfunding to grab the funding from the cloud piece by piece for both equity and debt. And then nowadays, you can tokenize your asset or tokenize your project, which is legal here in Thailand. So we would love to share within this 10 minutes. And for TFA, Thai Fintech Association, we are independent, self-funded, non-profit organization. So if you love to connect with TFA, either you are startups, SMEs, incumbents or regulators, we would love to connect. Okay, next slide, please. Starting about a payment. So this one I copied from the global overview report on digital. You can Google it, and you can see that Hong Kong is a top 1 in terms of the mobile payment penetration, 41%, right? And Thailand, we are number 3 after Taiwan. So we have 36 or roughly 1/3 of the internet user to be using the mobile payment. That's great because the world average is about 1/4. Okay, next please. If you focus more on the online purchases, okay, the previous one is like mobile payment. So this one is like online purchases. You can use internet, browser, whatsoever. In Thailand, we are the top of the world in terms of the online purchases because we love to use social media, right? I think in this part of the world, we are all the same. We love social media. So whenever typical Thai navigating the IG or Facebook, that would be the tag. That would be the marketing to tag you to TV, electronic, whatsoever, and fashion. Okay, so that's why we have seen a lot of the online purchases, including the Grab, right, to do the ride hailing, to do the food delivery, and to do from that super app. So that's make this figure so high. Next one, please. In Thailand, if we talk about the digital payment, I think for the past 5 years, the number of transactions increased by 5 times. Okay, 5 years ago, approximately 60 transactions per day per person. I mean, for a typical Thai, it's common for a person to do the online payment or digital payments 60 times a year, 5 years ago. Nowadays, it's 300 times a year per person. And we have the plan to increase this one from 300 times per year to 800 times per year within 3 years. And thanks to our regulators, the BOT, it has issued the new financial landscape earlier this year. I mean, the first quarter of this year, to have more openness. Okay, so the digital strategy on your left-hand side talked about open competition, open infrastructure, and open data. For open competition, you will see a lot of newcomers, and we have been talking about the guideline of virtual banking, no brick and mortar banking, or you can name it as a challenger bank, like what MAS in Singapore has done earlier. Okay, so we need to keep our eyes on that one to open more competition. On open infrastructure, the CBDC will play a crucial role in terms of the payment. CBDC means central bank digital currency. So it's like you don't have to have the Facebook or any private entity to issue the stable coin. You can have the central bank to issue the stable coin. So it's more like a banknote that is legal tender, right? CBDC is like a digital form of banknotes. And thanks to the programmability, we can have more and more smart contracts, or we can write any codes, embed that to that CBDC. So it would change the world a lot. And we have been successfully implemented the wholesale CBDC. I mean, the CBDC across the countries with China, Hong Kong, and UAE. Okay, so we need to keep our eyes on that CBDC. For open data, we will see a lot of the open APIs from commercial banks, meaning that if we are the customers, the retail customers, by the consent, we can share this data to the third party, and the third party should be like startup or separated entity from the incumbent, innovating the new solutions or new applications. So you will see mobile banking apps alongside the many apps from the startups in Thailand. Okay, next slide, please. So that's mainly for the payment. We will see a lot of changes. In terms of fundraising, since we are helping our SMEs and corporates, right? So in Thailand, there are 3 ways to do the fundraising. The first one is traditional initial public offering, that if you are issuing the equity or debt, you can do the IPO, okay, via the traditional securities houses. So in Thailand, we are the second in terms of the market value of stock IPO after Indonesia in ASEAN. And in debt financing, we've been talking about the ESG themed, ESG style of issuing the green bond, okay, to do the zero carbon footprint. In terms of fintech, there are two ways. The first one is crowdfunding, is that you can to grab $1 million to open up your restaurant or to expand your business. You can use the crowdfunding portal to either grab the loans from many people from the accounts or to grab the more equity shareholders. So this one is legal in Thailand for equity and debt crowdfunding. Okay, you can view the debt crowdfunding like issuing the bill of exchange or issuing the corporate bond, but in the much smaller terms. Okay, so that's for the crowdfunding. And last year and this year, we have had the initial coin offering. So it's more like the tokenization. Now we have two words, right? The first one is initial public offering for traditional equities and debts. And then we have initial coin offering to tokenize anything, okay? It could be investment token, utility token, or both. And here we have two examples, two successful examples. The first one, the first initial coin offering in Thailand is Sili Hub token, issued by Sansili. It's one of the biggest property developer listed in the stock exchange of Thailand. It issued a Sili Hub token to sell the headquarters of Sansili for 2.4 billion baht. This 2.4 billion baht is divided into two tranches. The first one, tranche A, offering 4.5% of return per annum. So it's more like a property fund, like a REIT. And then the tranche B offering 8% per annum. Okay, if you see this one, more people will be interested in tranche B, right? But for tranche B, there will be the risk associated by the selling price of this asset at the end of the fourth year. So if the selling price is higher than 2.4, the token B holder would get a benefit, and vice versa, meaning that if the selling price is less than 2.4 billion baht, token B holder will get back less than the principal they have been invested. So this one is very innovative in the sense that we can issue in many transactions and we can embed any fancy features into it. The second deal is from Destiny token, the MOPI. So it issues something like a corporate bond offering 2.99% per annum as a basic yield. And then it has a chance to offer up to 5% per annum if the revenue of this movie reaches 1 billion baht domestically. So it's more fancier. And it has the utility component by offering the free tickets or souvenirs for the investor. So this one is very innovative in Thailand. And if you ask me about the future of this tokenization, I would say that we are working on leveling the playing field to have number C and number A in the same playing field in terms of the taxation and everything. Because for initial public offering, if you buy or sell stocks in the stock exchange of Thailand, there will be no capital gain tax. And the withholding tax on dividend is only 10%, which is a final tax. But for tokenization, initial coin offering, the withholding tax is 15% for capital gain, for any kind of returns, and it's not the final tax yet, meaning that you need to do the tax filing at the end of the tax year. Okay, so that's all for my sharing. So let's go straight to the Q&A.
Thank you very much for your short but also really informative presentation. And I think for maybe let's finish the last presentation speaker, and if we still have some time, we will come to the Q&A much. So let's come to the last but not least speaker, Mr. Thiat Jin Oi. We call Mr. TJ Oi. So he is lead consultant of ASEAN and East Asia the Entrepreneurship, Startups, and Innovation Knowledge Lab. He is the founder of Curated Connectors, consulting firm with the aim of helping micro, small, media enterprises, both locally and global, grow their business through strategic and curated connections. So without further ado, Mr. TJ
No
Oy,
worries.
apologize.
Okay.
Floor is
I
yours.
will share screen on my end
share
so that I
your-
can control the time and make sure that, I will also finish within 10 minutes.
Thank you so much for the
Okay. So first, thank you very much, Mekong Institute invitation to share this afternoon. In the course of the next 10 minutes, I have just sliced it down by 5 minutes. I want to be able to share just a few thoughts, based on the ESI Knowledge Lab and myself, a consultant, what we have been gathering from the people that we've spoken to. Let me just give you a very quick overview in terms of the ESI Knowledge Lab. It's an initiative of the Economic Research ASEAN and Asia, familiar with them, engaging with them, engaging with MSMEs, with startups through the initiatives. And then we decided, this year, sometime in April, that we would launch this knowledge lab. It's a hub. Ability to build this from the entrepreneur collectively be able to outside the LinkedIn pages. Just check us out. Our moderator has kindly herself, so I will also leave